Everybody say hello. What was that again?
Welcome to Turkey Chats. We're so excited you're here and tuning in today. My name is Brittany Sweeney, and I'm the Communications Manager with the Livestock Conservancy. And here with me today is Jeanette Behringer, our Senior Programs Manager, and Frank Reese of Good Shepherd Farm. We're so excited to have y'all here and talk turkeys with us. Before we get started, I just want to say thank you to all of our members. They help make programs like Turkey Chats possible, so thank you for everything that you are doing. If you're not already a member and you want to learn more about becoming one, please let us know. Leave us a comment or give us a call or visit our website. We'd be more than happy to tell you all about memberships. Speaking of comments, please leave us a question or a comment. Let us know you're here, and we will get to your questions at the end. Jeanette, do you want to introduce Frank?
I sure do. I've known Frank for quite a number of years, and everything I know about turkeys I've learned from Frank. And Frank is one of those folks that there is no other equal. He's been in the into turkeys and waterfowl and chickens. It's been a lifelong passion of his, and he currently has one of the largest breeding flocks of heritage turkeys in the country. And the Conservancy has enjoyed a long time partnership with Frank, and he's helped to guide our programs towards helping heritage turkeys and breeders and cultivate a new generation. And I first met Frank when I was working on the Heritage Turkey Manual, which we have on our website that's free for download. And it was quite a learning curve I had, but all thanks to Frank, he got me through it. And we've got some good pieces to help people learn about turkeys. So Frank, the first thing I'd love to talk about is, could you share what life has been like with turkeys, starting when you were a little boy and growing up in Kansas and where you are today?
Yeah, it was a much different world back then as a kid, because it was still a lot of small producers, still a lot of people around here that raised, 300 or 400 turkeys and were able to get them into the market. This part of the country, they were just beginning to go into larger farms, with 5,000, 10,000 turkeys, but there was still a market, local market. So it was a different world back then. And plus, most of the people I knew were still raising the standard bred turkeys. They had not switched over as a young kid, And then, of course, my involvement in 4-H and showing turkeys, and that's where I met many of the people that became my mentors that were still around at that time. There were still a large number of turkeys being shown at county fairs and state fairs and things like that, where people shared, and that's where you learned. So it was a much different world. And plus, back then, we still had a lot of people at Thanksgiving time came to the farm and bought live turkeys. 30 years ago, I was still had people that would come out to the farm and get their turkey for Thanksgiving. Some of them would ask for me to go ahead and do the turkey in and put it in a bag. A lot of people didn't necessarily want to kill the turkey, but but those days are gone. Now, I don't have anybody that does that anymore. So it was a different world. But it was the showing and the exhibition and the competition and the forge that literally changed my world with turkeys.
Mm-hmm. And now at your farm, you've got somewhere along the lines of about 10,000 turkeys that you raise every year. Is that correct? Or about how many do you have?
Yeah, we just did our Thanksgiving turkeys. We have to do them 3 weeks before Thanksgiving. We did 7,400 for Thanksgiving. And then I kept back a little over 2,000 breeders for the next season. And so, yeah, it was close to 10 to 11,000 turkeys that I hatched from my breeders from the previous year that I hatched here on my farm. Because I do all my own breeding, all my own hatching. That's the only way I can keep the quality up that I need to keep up in these turkeys.
Mm-hmm. And one thing that I hear from folks getting into turkeys is it's hard to find a good turkey, and they do get a lot from hatchery stock and that. How do you tell people what to look for in a quality turkey? Say they don't know what they're looking at. Are there any key points that you tell people this is what you need to be looking for?
Yeah, it's really hard because I face this a lot with people. Whenever anybody calls and tells me they have turkeys,
Hello.
tell me they have Bourbon Reds or is where did they come from and what line do you have? It's not necessarily do you have Bourbon Reds or Narragansets or Bronze. It's what line of Bourbon Reds do you have? Whose do you have? That's what makes the difference. Mm-hmm. The number one thing that is missing today in being able to keep these standard-bred turkeys at a marketable level is we've got to breed them back to the original standards. We have to pay attention to that. And we have lots of people who are breeding feather colors, but they're not breeding marketable birds. They pay attention to whether whatever feather pattern they have, but they don't pay attention to all the other qualities that is required for standard-bred turkeys. I always ask them, what is the weight of your breeding toms? What is the weight of your breeding hens? That immediately tells me what it is. So people think nothing of, if they're buying hogs, if they're buying cattle or something, they always want to know in cattle, what is the weight of the calves when they're born, or, what is, this kind of stuff. They ask questions about the marketability of their, but when it comes to buying turkeys, they don't ask those questions. What is the fertility rate of the eggs of the stock that you're getting? How many eggs does the hen lay? What is her weight at 24, 28 weeks? What is the weight of your tom? What is the average? And you should ask those questions because that's going to tell you what you're going to have at the other end.
Mm-hmm. And when you refer to the standards, you mean the we're talking about the American Poultry Association Standard of Perfection. And this is a book that's put out by the APA every 4 years, I think, every 5 years.
Every 4 to 5 years.
Yeah, and this is the poultry Bible. If you really want to know what a good bird's supposed to look like, that's your go-to. It'll tell you the weights, the color patterns, skin color, eye color, everything. And the birds either meet standard or they don't. And Frank is right. You see a lot of birds out there that they're pretty birds, but put them on a scale and they're not so great. And that's really important is, what's under the feathers. And I was excited last year at the Ohio National to see that huge turkey show and the table judging. And that must have been quite a thrill for you to see that come together.
Yeah, I never get to go. This year would have been the first year that I could have gone to the Ohio show because we loaded turkeys a week earlier. Every year, the Ohio Poultry Show is the same weekend we have to load turkeys. And so I've never made it.
Yeah.
I would like to have gone, the last time I was at a really big turkey show was a long time ago, the APA Nationals when it was in Nebraska. That Norman Kardosh was still alive, so that's how long it's been. And we had over 100 turkeys at that show. I would like to have gone because, if there's anything missing today in keeping the standard or heritage turkey going and making it continuously marketable and have a place in the market, we've got to get better breeders. We've
Mm-hmm.
got to have people that know how to breed and select.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I tell people, if you could get bourbon red turkeys from 10 different people, and every one of them is going to look different, because the bourbon red is no better than the breeder behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And so what did that breeder select for?
Mm-hmm.
Or, but the old people used to tell me, you don't eat the feathers.
Yep.
And there is only one breed of turkey, and that's turkey. The rest are just color variations of turkey.
Mm-hmm.
But there are certain varieties of turkeys that are extremely important to keep, that we must keep. I often tell people the Jeanette Berenger quote, which is if we lose it, it's gone forever. And
Mm-hmm.
we cannot remake it. We can make something that looks like it, but it's not, because the original turkeys that were used to make those lines are gone.
Yeah.
And so we must, and the number one turkey that must be saved is the bronze, the standard bronze, because it is the key to everything. The standard bronze, even Norman always told me, he said, you can remake from them a lot of the other varieties, but you can never remake the bronze.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's been, that's the variety that is the most important to keep if we're going to have these turkeys well into the future.
Mm-hmm.
But now we have very few people that even know exactly what a standard bronze is supposed to look like. What makes it, I feel lucky that the line I have here has been here now in Kansas for 103 years.
Wow.
And I can actually trace them back beyond that.
Can you tell the story about your mother's wedding present?
Well, they were Norman's mothers.
Norman's mothers, yes.
Norman's mother. Back in 1917, when Norman Kardash's mother was getting married, her two brothers, who were already turkey farmers here in Kansas, as a wedding gift, contacted the Bird brothers back in Pennsylvania. And the Bird brothers from about 1900 to 1930 were the top. If you wanted the Golden Banks bronze turkeys, that was the Bird brothers. They were the key to everything. They would later on, but anyway, that's where they got the eggs. And they paid $5 a piece for turkey eggs back in 1917, which was a huge amount.
That's a load of money.
That's a load of money. And the eggs were put into wooden crates and packed and shipped from Pennsylvania to Kansas. And that was what they gave her as a wedding gift when she got married. And that started her down the road. And then she went on. Norman's mother, a lot of people don't know, she was a fairly good turkey grower and producer, and used to travel to all the great turkey shows up to Minnesota and so on, back when they rode on trains. And that was important back then, because if you could win one of the big national shows in South Dakota, North Dakota, Nebraska, or Denver, or whatever, the marketability of your turkeys went way up. Mm-hmm. And so, because back then the APA, which they're doing again now, will come and certify your flock. And so when you're selling your turkeys at Thanksgiving, people often back then used to want to buy APA certified turkeys for Thanksgiving, because they knew the meat quality and the standard was going to be so much higher. So anyway, those turkeys then went on. Now, when Norman was a young kid back in the 30s, and he wanted to get his own show turkeys, Norman actually started with White Hollands that he got from the great White Holland breeder Henry Domes out of Oregon. But then as time went on, then Norman eventually then at one time, sort of like I'm doing, kept all 8 standard varieties. But his specialty, Norman's specialty, his favorite turkey was the Narragansett, but he also always kept quality slates and Bourbon Reds. Of course, my Bourbon Reds, Norman's Bourbon Reds, back then all came from Sadie Lloyd, who was the great Bourbon Red breeder. That I, as a kid in high school, I do remember her and going to her farm and seeing her Bourbon Reds. Her daughter is still alive. Her daughter actually came and visited the farm
Wow.
because she wanted to see her mother's turkeys. Her daughter's now in her 80s. So,
Wow.
you know, that's part of the thing I try to tell people when I look at these turkeys. I don't just see bronze or Bourbon Reds and Narragansett. I actually see people, you know, because I know where they came from and who had them and who made them into what they are. And that's important because that's part of the reason why my turkeys have been successful in the market. That's why they've been successful in their rate of growth and in their feed conversion and in their hatchability is I've just built on what the people before me had done.
Well, I try to say as often as I can that don't ever forget and I learned this a lot from you, is don't forget the people that walk the halls before you do. And I get frustrated when people are, you know, the expert of an X breed and never mention the people that did all the hard work to keep it going. And I think it's really important to record that piece of history because it helps you to understand, you know, as you said, where the birds come from, what was the thinking of this person, were they show people, were they production, and you know, you got to give credit where credit is due, and you know, it always puts a smile on my face when I hear of people that look up to a mentor, and I think that's how we cultivate the next generation of breeders of not only turkeys, but, you know, all of the livestock and poultry is through mentoring and learning from others that know how to do it. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. You know, you can make your own wheel, but you don't need to reinvent the basic structure. And you can only learn that from the people that have been doing it for so many years. And, you know, what's that worth to get 5 decades, 6 decades or more experience at your door? And I know it's getting rarer and rarer, but I really admire folks that mentor the next generation and help them to understand better about their breeds. And now you were early in the days of the turkey work with the Conservancy. You were there, and you know, it was around 1997 that the giant red flag went up that there were only 1,400 breeding birds left in the country. And tell me how you found your way to the Conservancy and what it was like in those early days where, I mean, they were that close to the brink. You know, all the varieties in the entire country were that close to the brink. What was that like?
Well, you know, I've been a member of the Conservancy back since its beginning. I mean, when it was the Minor Breeds Conservancy. I actually helped the gentleman, I should remember his name, that was head of Sedgwick County Zoo. I think when he your first president or something or whatever, or head of the board at the very beginning. Back when the Sedgwick County Zoo was being built, he actually came to me and wanted some of my poultry for the zoo. So that was my first beginning, you know, with, I still have shirts that say, you know, Minor Breeds Conservancy. And then when I can't remember what, I think it happened maybe afterwards, but of course, Margie Bender and I did a lot together at the beginning. Her and I did a lot of traveling together. She was an important person, you know, her and I did a lot of classes and stuff. And I went to some of the places to help teach and to visit other farms. There was, you know, my background and where they were coming from, there was something for both of us to give and take, you know, between my thinking and my APA background and my standardbred turkey background, and then what the Livestock Conservancy was doing at that time. But there were certain people, like I attended the first meeting you all ever put on, which was there at is it Virginia Tech there in Blacksburg, Virginia. And I got to meet now Dr. Carl Lawson,
I think.
At the meeting, who he worked with George Nicholas, the man who made the industrial turkey. He was at the meeting, and, you know, so that was part of the exciting part for me was some of the people I got to meet. That was my first time to spend time with Dr. Phil Spangenberg. And as we discussed the future, of what was going to happen to try to save turkeys. I've learned tons since then, but it was an important start. It was an important role. And of course, the big thing the Livestock Conservancy did for me was, it was because of you that the New York Times contacted me and said, we're looking for the best tasting turkey in America. And Marion Burroughs had contacted the Conservancy, and you all sent her to me. And that was the great breakthrough of getting my turkeys out there into the world, because my turkeys won. They, the Bourbon Red, the Narragansett, and the Bronze were chosen as the best tasting turkeys in America. And that was because of what the Conservancy did back then. And that was in 2001 that it came out. So, and since then, I have finally gotten to meet Marion Burroughs, to thank her for putting us on the map.
Well, I remember when I first came on in 2005.
I think I've lost your voice.
Huh? I can't hear the video, the audio. Oh.
Not too sure what to do.
Okay. Can you hear myself or Brittany?
Can you hear us? Can you see? I can put it in the chat. Jeanette, what is your question?
I was gonna ask him.
I can see you guys.
Yeah. In the early days, when that New York Times
Should I
article.
shut off and come back?
Yeah, we could try that.
Okay.
Yeah. I was going to talk about, in those early days when I came on board in 2005, I can remember when, October, November rolled around. I spent a lot of time answering phone calls from people that wanted heritage breed turkeys, and they got started then and expected to be able to pick up the phone or go to a store and buy a heritage turkey, and all frustrated, they came and called the office, and they're like, I can't find a turkey, where can I find it? And
I can hear you again.
Okay.
Yay.
I was talking about when I first came on with the Conservancy, that in 2005, one of the strongest memories I had is when Thanksgiving came around, people wanted heritage turkeys. They had read the New York Times article, and they were frustrated because they couldn't find any. And even today, it's not the easiest thing to find. What do you tell people when they want to, how far in advance do you suggest people plan so that they can ensure they have a heritage bird for the holidays?
Well, the earlier that you can let the farmer know, the better. Now that these turkeys are gone, we're already planning for 2021. For what we got to get out there and into the next thing. But as I get a lot of phone calls from people, of course, one of the things I always really suggest, if you want to know you're getting the authentic thing, look for the APA certification. That way you absolutely know you're getting, because there are fake heritage turkeys being sold. Can we talk a little bit about that? They can put the word heritage in because there's no way to really police that, which is the reason why you've chosen to go the APA route. But how do folks know the difference? If they don't see the APA label, but there's heritage on it, are there some telltale signs? Like I imagine the carcass is going to be quite different than a heritage. But the average consumer is not going to know.
Yeah.
The other thing is a lot of people think if they're white feathered, they're modern. If they're dark feathered, they're heritage. And that's not true either. It's not the color of the feathers that makes the turkey heritage. And so there's been white feathered turkeys for 2,000 years. So that's not it. The only thing the consumer can do is, one thing, get to know the farmer maybe that raised the turkey and ask them the questions. But the things that the Conservancy came up with for the definition, was the turkey results of natural mating. That the modern industrial turkey and they're making them now that are black and chocolate colored. And of course, the broad-breasted bronze has been around for a long time, so they're which are totally identical to the industrial commercial white, but they just may have brown feathers or bronze feathers or whatever. But they're all the results of artificial insemination. They all grow 3 times faster than my turkeys and everything. So the only way you can know is you're going to have to ask.
Yeah.
Most farmers aren't trying to deceive people. I really believe that. What it is most people just don't know. And so I have fought a few of those bigger companies. And I know the Livestock Conservancy has had some issues. Some major big companies trying to copy our word heritage for their turkeys that are not. And, so the consumer just has to be careful. If you want absolute, they look for that certification.
Yeah.
And there are, I'm not the only one that is selling certified APA heritage turkeys. There's a few other people I know back east that they're doing it small scale. They're doing it totally in retail. They're not doing it in wholesale. I went through all the work and hired the lawyers in Washington and everything to get my label, USDA label, to state standard bred. And that was the help of Dave Anderson and the APA, how I was able to get that through. There's a couple other people are going to be doing that, which I'm excited about. And
now, if people want to get your turkeys for the holidays, are they still able to order some through Heritage Foods USA?
Yeah, and one of the things you could do is, Heritage Foods USA sells, I don't know what percentage is what, but they sell retail. You can buy directly from them. But they also sell to a number of retail outlets. So they do sell wholesale. I know a company in Denver bought hundreds of them from Patrick. And so the people in Denver at the meat places could buy our turkeys. I know in San Francisco, they've done the same thing. In Atlanta, they've done the same thing. So, I had a guy from Texas contact me today, and I said I would contact Heritage Foods and see if there's anybody in Dallas that is going to be having my turkeys. So you can either, which does save the consumer a little bit because you're not paying shipping, if you can go and pick it up. But for a lot of people, they can't. And so Patrick will ship them anywhere. And, we've shipped turkeys to Canada, to Israel, to England.
Holy moly.
Wow.
So, we can, to Alaska, we can ship them wherever. If they, and what happens is the shipping costs get quite high. But they still got them.
How do you feel about the future of heritage turkeys?
We've got to get more breeders. That's what's really lacking. And we've got to raise the quality. If we're going to compete, if we're going to keep this going, we've got to get back to the standards of market heritage turkeys that would be equivalent to the 1940s when they were at their height. And I want to keep it as much as we can within the power of individual farms. I don't want it to be taken over by corporations because, then it gets lost. And that's what's unique about these animals. You don't need the big corporations to reproduce them. But that's the part that's missing. I think we haven't even begun to touch, what is possible in these birds. And we need to get them to have real security for a lot of these breeds. There needs to be no less than 20,000 breeders of each variety. Then you begin to relax a little. Because Dr. Ed Buss from Penn State told me that's the number they considered enough genetic diversity for security, was 20,000.
That's a
And
lot.
so we're a long ways from that.
Yeah, yeah.
And 20,000 turkeys of quality.
Yeah.
The other part is keeping biodiversity. You know, biodiversity is food security. And so we need to have, as I remember as a kid, that if I wanted to improve my bronze or my Bourbon Reds, there was breeders I could contact in California, in Pennsylvania, in Texas. I could bring, they weren't that far removed. That, you know, is one of the things you taught me, Jeanette, you know, is though even if these turkeys were moved somewhere else 5 years ago, once they leave your farm and they're your bloodline, they do change and they do evolve at that under the hands of that other farmer. But you can still bring them back because they're not that far removed, but it's just enough to keep the strength up. You know, it's like every year for 40 years, I bought Jersey Giants from Golda Miller every year and brought them to my farm. And I still have those, but I don't have that freedom of getting her bloodline. But the reason I'm trying to get into, I'm talking about how do you keep a line going and yet still have diversity. And that's really important because that is part of the problem within the food industry is there is no diversity of any kind. 99.9% of all the turkeys being sold worldwide today are one genetic line.
Yeah, well, I also find that, you know, commercial industry is dependent upon somebody else to conserve the diversity, you know, and I see a lot of people that feel like, well, I can only make money with hybrids. And I'm like, well, okay, that's fine. But what are you doing to keep the purebreds around so you've got that highly productive hybrid? And the answer is always, well, somebody else will do it, you know,
Yeah,
and that's not the answer.
Nope.
It's really not. But hey, Brittany, do you have any questions from the audience?
We do. Frank, were you trying to say something?
Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say what I was going to add to what she was saying, which is so important within the industry. George Nicholas, a lot of the old breeders who made these modern turkeys knew exactly that, Jeanette. They knew what you just said. And George Nicholas always kept Narragansetts and bronze and blacks and stuff on his farm. And he said they would be there as long as he was alive because he knew he may have to go back to them to, you know, if they start having problems. But the modern industry has destroyed all those birds. They no longer have that to go back to.
Yeah, no, all the university flocks are gone, mostly, you know, maybe one here and there.
You know, if I would have known 30 some years ago when Dr. Bill Crowley at Texas A&M had the most beautiful flock of Beltsville small whites you ever saw. And when he died, the university killed them all. You know, that was a huge loss, but that happened everywhere.
Oh yeah, every year I hear about it. Do you want to take some questions, Brittany?
Sure.
Yeah. Let's see. Harry House says, how do you weigh a rowdy turkey?
Well, there are turkey scales, you know, where they're hanging scales that actually have a hook on them. You can also hang a cage and put the turkey in a cage, or you can do what we do. You get scales and you weigh yourself, and then you hold the turkey and get on the scale and then weigh it again and then subtract. But that's, you know, most of the industry which weighs their turkeys actually have cages that sit on scales, and you put the turkey in, you balance with the cage, and you put the turkey in and weigh it. It's real important to know where your turkeys are.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks, Harry. That was a good question. Morgan says, which of the 8 standard variations would you recommend for small homesteads raising less than 20 or so turkeys a year?
It's all about what speaks to you. You know, if you're really taken by the Bourbon Reds or that collar pattern, it depends on what you want on the other end. If you're looking at them aesthetically or if you're looking at them marketably. There are certain varieties that are far better marketably, reliably year after year, and that is the Bronze, the White Hollands, and the Narragansetts. They really have proved themselves through the last 150 years. They're very reliable. Some of the other varieties, the Bourbon Reds, the Royal Palms, the Slates, and some of the old geneticists told me you pay a price for that red gene. That red gene actually affects that turkey's ability and growth rate and size. So anyway, but you can tolerate anything. If you're going to have a small amount, basically get what speaks to you, and then you're more apt to stick at it. And the turkeys will be no better than the turkeys that you get the line that you buy, I always tell people when they come to me and ask me that question, I say, what do you want the turkey to do for you? What is it you want? If you want a pet, are you wanting to market turkeys? Are you wanting to feed your family? And that lets me know where they need to go and what they need to get. Mm-hmm. Turkeys should have a job.
Yes, indeed.
Absolutely. Thank you, Morgan. That's a good question. Kristen has a long question. She says, our family had our first turkeys to show for 4-H last year. We really enjoyed how curious they were. We want to focus on conservancy breeds going forward and really like the Bourbon Red breed. Is that breed suitable for northern Indiana weather? Are they a calm breed appropriate for being around other animals? We tried to find a local breeder, but with not a lot of luck.
The Bourbon Reds are a real challenge. They're absolutely gorgeous birds if you get good show quality, pure Bourbon Reds. But you pay a price. They're the slowest growing, of the varieties. It's hard to keep the size up on them. I remember asking the old breeders of Bourbon Reds, who were actually trying to raise them for market, what they did to keep the size up. And they said, about every 5 or 6 years, they throw a few bronze hens in the flock to keep the size up, because the Bourbon Reds have a tendency to get small on you if you don't pay attention. The secret is keeping your hens big. Your toms will get smaller and smaller the smaller your hens get. Most Bourbon Reds are probably, because of their small size, are probably some of the most flighty. They can fly, and they can get on top of every barn roof. And, of course, most all my turkeys have, but Bourbon Reds, just because of their mere size, they're about like Royal Palms, which are Royal Palms aren't that far removed in their body shape and so on. A lot of the Royal Palms today than the wild turkey. So, but as far as being gentle, turkeys are turkeys. Makes no difference in color, feathers. Turkeys are like cats, they want to get into everything, be everywhere. If you're there, they want to be there. They want to see what you're up to. Turkeys are really, if you get the old standard breeds, they're smart, they don't forget. They know the difference between who you are and a stranger, and turkeys have a multiple language. And once you learn their language, you can really understand what they need and what their wants are. They will they'll talk up a storm if you'll listen to them.
Well, it's like the opening video that Brittany showed. That was actually me in your turkey yard.
Yes, I recognize my turkeys.
Yeah, and I remember when we first showed that video, we got one comment that somebody had said, why did you crowd all those turkeys into this one spot? And I'm like, no, you don't understand. They want to be there. They have acres and acres to wander. But because you are in the yard, they all want to come and see you.
You have entered their territory.
Yeah.
I can go out there and they pay absolutely no mind to me. I mean, it's like I'm not even there. But you bring somebody in they've never seen before, and you will be surrounded.
And
which makes sense of Mother Nature. That's how they get rid of unwanted things. They surround it and become a huge force. So you've entered their territory, and they're going to surround you and see how long you'll put up with it.
Yeah.
So that's a hard question to answer.
laughed.
The number one thing and also if you make a pet out of them, if you have just a few and you make a pet out of them, they're more apt to become aggressive because they will then see you as another turkey. The turkey will imprint on you. And if you notice, people say they have an aggressive tom. Well, what that tom is doing is actually treating you as he would treat any other tom. He's trying to fight you and run you off because you're there to steal his hens.
Mm-hmm.
So the main thing with turkeys is no different than it is with if you've got bulls and cattle. You don't make a pet out of them.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yep.
they need to know that you're a human and they're a turkey and that you're in charge. So the other thing is if you can visit the breeder and visit the turkeys, that'll tell you a lot. Turkeys are not for everybody. You know, you're either going to love them or hate them.
Mm-hmm.
Because turkeys are by far the most demanding.
Mm-hmm. They're a lot of bird.
Yeah, they're a lot of bird and they take a lot of attention. My dad always said it's like having a dairy farm. You can never leave them.
Yeah.
And everything wants to eat them. So
That's
you have
true.
to constantly, you're in charge of them.
Mm-hmm. Well, this has been fascinating and a real treat to spend time with you. I know it's a busy time of year for you, and I really appreciate you taking the time out to chat with us. And you know, what you do is amazing, and I hope you're able to do it for many more years. And
I hope.
But thank you so much for coming on the show, and good luck with the upcoming season. Is there any websites that you would like us to share with
They can go
folks?
to Heritage Foods USA if they want to see where to buy the turkeys. They can go to Frank Reese on Facebook. I am on Facebook, but I only talk poultry. If you're looking for anything else on mine, you won't find it. I don't allow anything else but turkeys and chickens and ducks and geese on my Facebook. And then we are working still on trying to build a school here to teach the next generation. So they could go to Good Shepherd Conservancy. You know, we're working on that with some people, with hopefully Livestock Conservancy and the APA and everybody. But it's basically just to try to help teach the next generation of breed selection and so on here. So those are some of the sites if they want to look. But if they want just fun stuff, you know, they can go to Facebook. I'm not always, you know, I do get a lot of requests and so on, and I try to, sometimes it takes me a while to get back, you know. What's been fun about Facebook is I get questions now from South Africa to Australia to Europe to Mexico, you know. There's a lot of people around who want to do something. But
well, that's good news.
The Livestock Conservancy, you guys have been a very important part of my life for 30 some years or however long it's been. Seems like yesterday, but I know it's probably getting, is it 40 years yet?
Well, if you've been involved with the Conservancy, we've been around for like 43 years. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know I was in anesthesia school. I was in college in anesthesia when I joined. So that's a long time ago, because I've been an RN now for 50 years. So.
Well, thank you again. And we really appreciate you coming. And do we have any closing messages for folks, Brittany?
Just remind everybody to tune in again next week. We'll be talking a little bit more about the history with Margie, mentioned on the show today, and Bob Hawes, and is it
Carolyn Christman.
Yes.
Tell them all hi.
We shall.
We will. Have a great day, everyone.
Bob periodically.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.